What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, as you already may know, Jermell Charlo, two-time junior middleweight world champion, and now unified junior middleweight WBC, WBA, IBF, IBO, Ring Magazine, lineal world champion, Jermell Iron Man Charlo, right? Has solidified that with his 8th round knockout victory over JEISON ROSARIO, who was unified junior middleweight champion, who defeated Julian J. Rock Williams, who was the unified junior middleweight champion, who defeated Swift Jarrett Hurd to become the unified junior middleweight world champion. Now, this is what I want to discuss. Jermell Charlo is arguably making a case for himself to be the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. I know people are going to look and be like, well, Blue, you're being a prisoner of the moment. But I'm not. Why am I not? Because of Jermell Charlo's resume. Now, Jermell Charlo may have a lot of guys on his resume that the casual boxing fans may not know and identify and say, these guys are good boxers, right? Jermell Charlo has defeated some of the best junior middleweights in the world. And if you are not familiar with these names as a hardcore boxing fan, you are only going to look at the Rosarios, the Tony Harrisons, and Austin Trout of the world. But on the contrary, did you know that Jermell Charlo beat Demetrius Hopkins, nephew of the great Bernard the Executioner Hopkins? Demetrius Hopkins was 33-2-1 when Jermell Charlo beat him. Demetrius Hopkins was seen as one of the next best things in the sport of boxing. That's what Demetrius Hopkins was seen as. Then he beat Gabe Rosado when Gabe Rosado was still Gabe Rosado, who was a junior middleweight serious contender, right? Then he beat Vanes Monterosian. Tough out. Vanes Monterosian at the time only had one loss on his resume. Vanes Monterosian was seen as, like Demetrius Hopkins. He was better than Demetrius Hopkins, but he was seen as somebody who would eventually become a world champion in the sport of boxing. Jermell Charlo beat him. Unanimous decision, right? These fights, Demetrius Hopkins, unanimous decision. Gabe Rosado, unanimous decision. See, this is the Jermell Charlo that was the pure sweet science boxer. Before this knockout artist presented itself, this is the first half of Jermell Charlo's career, right? Then he beat John Jackson. Not too many people are going to know who John Jackson was. But John Jackson was seen as a rough, rugged out in the sport of boxing. Could possibly be a champion, right? The son of Julian Jackson. You understand? He beat him. Then he beat Charles Hatley. Charles Hatley was one of the best boxers in the amateurs, and Charles Hatley was 26-1 when Jermell Charlo fought him. And, you know, Jermell Charlo knocked him out in dramatic fashion. He may have been undefeated, but Jermell Charlo knocked him out in dramatic fashion. Then Jermell Charlo fought rising, upcoming superstar, junior middleweight, soon-to-be world champion, Erickson the Hammond Lubin, who was undefeated. He defeated Erickson the Hammond Lubin, Erickson the Hammer Lubin, via first-round knockout. Only blemish on his resume. Look who Erickson Lubin has beaten since that loss. He's beaten Terrell Goucher. He's beaten, and he's winning these fights fairly easy. Terrell Goucher, Nathaniel Gallimore, who was the first guy to stop JEISON ROSARIO. right? Then he beat Austin Trout. We understand Austin Trout, what he brings to the table. Austin Trout was a champion. Austin Trout, you know, southpaw, very tricky, very slick. He beat Austin Trout. Then he lost the fight to Tony Harrison, which most people thought he won that fight against Tony Harrison. The first fight, I'm one of those people. I thought he won the first fight. Then he beat Jorge Cota because he was supposed to fight. He was supposed to fight Tony Harrison, but Tony Harrison had to pull out due to hurting his ankle. Then he fought Jorge Cota and knocked him out in dramatic fashion. Then he rematched Tony Harrison to the day, December 21st, 2019. The first fight was December 22nd, 2018. Right? And he dramatically, in drastic fashion, knocks out Tony Harrison. Drops him 3 times, right? You know, 3 or 4 times, and end up knocking out Tony Harrison. Then he goes on to last night. Fights JEISON ROSARIO. Unified champion. Big puncher. Did the unthinkable. Went to Philadelphia. Knocked out Julian J. Rock Williams in his hometown in what was supposed to be a showcase fight for Julian J. Rock Williams en route to facing Jermell Charlo for unification bout. Jermell Charlo only drops him 3 times and stops him in the 8th round. So now, like I said, he's a unified champion. And if given the opportunity, because now I know a lot of people going to call for him to fight Erickson Lubin because Lubin is the mandatory for the WBC. No people going to call for him to fight Erislandy Lara, who's the WBA regular champion. No people going to call for him to fight, you know, Jarrett Hurd. Jarrett Hurd's putting himself in a position to be a mandatory challenger for one of the belts. You know, give Julian J. Rock Williams the opportunity to regain his titles. These are the conversations that's going to arise in the next coming months. But I want Jermell Charlo to face Teixeira because I want him to solidify himself as undisputed junior middleweight world champion. This is going to put him on course to be one of the greatest junior middleweight world champions in the history of the sport of boxing, if not the greatest. Right? And then those other fights are just toppings on his legacy. So if he was able to get the Teixeira fight and beat Teixeira, right? Because I'm highly favoring him to beat Teixeira. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I'm highly favoring him to beat Teixeira, right? And become undisputed. I'm sure most people will believe that Jermell Charlo will beat Teixeira and Patrick Teixeira. And, you know, Patrick Teixeira is 29 years old, a Brazilian fighter. You know, he's the WBO champion. He's 31-1, 22 by way of knockout. He's a big super middleweight, junior middleweight, excuse me. He's a southpaw, 5'11", nearly 6 feet. He beat Carlos Adams for, you know, the vacant WBO title. And he's the WBO champion, right? He doesn't have a fight schedule. Last time he fought was November of 2019. And he needs to be active. But I would love at this point to see Teixeira, Patrick Teixeira, and Jermell Charlo fight for undisputed. Then I want to see Jermell Charlo fight Julian J. Rock Williams, fight Erickson Lubin. You know, hopefully he could get opportunity where he gets a voluntary, you know, before he has to honor the fight against Erickson the Hammer Lubin. And hopefully that voluntary he could push for Teixeira fight. Beat Teixeira, because he will beat Teixeira, knock out Teixeira. Patrick Teixeira, 31-1, 22 by way of knockout. It's big, 6 feet. So beat Teixeira. And then for undisputed, now you're undisputed when you face Erickson Lubin, right? I'm going to favor Jermell Charlo to beat Erickson Lubin in the rematch. I didn't like how Erickson Lubin body language was when he got hit by Terrell Goucher in his last fight, and Terrell Goucher wasn't even asserting himself. And the body language I saw from Erickson the Hammer Lubin didn't display that of growth. And what I mean by growth is he still seems to come off to me as still not having his man strength. And so Terrell Goucher was landing punches, jabs that was seeming to have an effect on Erickson Lubin. And I'm high on Erickson Lubin, his skill set. Believe that. Southpaw, very skilled, a lot of speed, a lot of power, complete package. But I just don't think he's grown into his body yet, as of yet. I think he's still having to grow into his body. He just doesn't seem to have his man strength yet. His body just doesn't reflect that yet. And when you're dealing with Jermell Charlo, like I broke it down, he could take it because he has a chin, a granite chin. So he could take what you're dishing out. The problem is, can you take what he dishes out? Because his is going to get there just like yours is going to get there because he's a masterclass boxer just like everybody else. See, like I said, he outboxed all of these fighters in the first half of his career. And these were not, now hindsight is 2020. But at the time, these guys were seen as soon-to-be champions. These guys were seen as, some of them, like Demetrius Hopkins, people thought he was going to be like Bernard Hopkins. These were guys that Gabe Rosado was a tough out. Vanis Monterosian, tough out. Vanis Monterosian, champion. You understand? And he outboxed these guys clearly. And then he made adjustments to his style, getting with Derrick James, and now he added a knockout artist to be able to outbox you. So with that said, I just think that Erickson Lubin is not ready for Jermell Charlo. I think he should go into another fight, maybe a fight with, Jarrett Hurd. Maybe a fight with Julian J. Rock Williams. I would love that fight, right? Stylistically, two skillful guys, chess match. They fought on the same card. When Julian J. Rock Williams got stopped by Jason Rosario, Erickson Lubin versus Nathaniel Gallimore was the, co-main event. You understand? So maybe we could get that fight. You understand what I'm saying? And so with that said, I think that I think that he should be able to allow to have a voluntary match, and then face off against Teixeira. Push for this Teixeira fight. Push for the Teixeira fight. He's a golden boy fighter. Jaime Munguia was originally the guy with the WBO, and he moved up to 160 now. But that would have been the perfect fight. Jaime Munguia and Jermell Charlo for undisputed. But Jaime Munguia, first of all, he's not even that active. I don't even remember the last time Jaime Munguia even fought. And now he's moved up. So with that said, I would love to see Jermell Charlo versus Patrick Teixeira for undisputed. Then an Erislandy Lara fight. Julian J. Rock Williams, Hurd, and Erickson Lubin. Because that's the cherry on top. And I don't see any of them beating Jermell Charlo. I don't see it. He has mastered his style. He has mastered what he does great. And I don't see any of them beating him. So I believe he's making a case that he is the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Ironically enough, I'm going to have his stablemate, another unified champion. And let me say this. Derrick James has solidified himself as arguably the best trainer in boxing today. In boxing today. I have to give it up. Texas is running the sport of boxing. Texas is running the sport of boxing. Jermell Charlo has shown me that he's still adding pieces to his game. To somebody who's already accomplished, he's still adding layers to his game. I don't see nobody beating Jermell Charlo either. So Texas is running the sport of boxing right now. So like I was saying, though, Derrick James has another fighter, stablemate of Jermell Charlo, who's undefeated, unified, WBC, IBF, welterweight world champion, superstar boxer, Errol the True Spence Jr. And I believe Errol the True Spence Jr. is going to beat Danny Garcia November 21st. And then he's going to face Manny Pacquiao at some point in time in, I'm thinking, May. And he'll be unified WBA, WBC, IBF, Ring Magazine, lineal welterweight world champion. Because I expect him to beat Manny Pacquiao, who's the WBA champion. And I just feel like, see, Errol Spence Jr. has and will solidify himself as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Not only is he accomplishing all these feats as far as inside the ring, but he's also doing the pay-per-view numbers currently today. See, and we cannot go by the standards of Floyd Mayweather, that 1.1 and 2.0 pay-per-view. That's not that type of market. Floyd Mayweather caught lightning in the bottle. But for what today's market is presenting itself for the sport of boxing, Errol Spence is at the top of the top. He's at the top of the top. And I'm not counting the heavyweights, because the heavyweights, as the heavyweights go, so does the sport of boxing. So the heavyweights are different. They're in a class by themselves. They actually carry the sport of boxing. So Deontay Wilder's pay-per-view, it can't be compared to the pay-per-view of the smaller weight classes. Because they carry, Deontay Wilder carries the sport of boxing. Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua carry the sport of boxing. As the heavyweights go, so goes the sport of boxing. It's just that way. Because you got to understand, none of these guys, not in the heavyweight division, could beat Deontay Wilder. None of them could beat Tyson Fury. None of them could beat Anthony Joshua. You understand? So that's why they're not included in the pound-for-pound list. That pound-for-pound list was created for Sugar Ray Robinson, because you can't include the heavyweights, because they can't compete with the heavyweights. They can't get in the ring and beat the heavyweights. So it's a separate category. So with that said, he is the pay-per-view king today's time, and he has the biggest fight in the sport of boxing looming with Terence Crawford. Can you imagine the accolades Derrick James needs to receive? If Jermell Charlo is able to fight Patrick Teixeira, he's going to win that fight. That's a more winnable fight for him to become undisputed than Errol Spence and Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford, Errol Spence is more of a 50-50 fight. Patrick Teixeira, Jermell Charlo is more of a 80-20 fight. But there's a chance that Derrick James can have 2 undisputed boxers in his stable. So with that said, what I was getting at was, I think that Errol Spence is still the pound-for-pound king after he beats Danny Garcia. But I think that Jermell Charlo has surpassed Terence Crawford on that pound-for-pound list. Because I know he hasn't moved up the divisions and the weight classes like Terence Crawford did. Jermell Charlo, that be. You know, Terence Crawford started at 130, 135, 140, 47. So he has the ability to be a world champion in multiple weight classes, which is different from Jermell Charlo. I think that Jermell Charlo eventually, once he becomes undisputed, let's say Jermell Charlo beats Patrick Teixeira, he goes on and fights. He already fight Lubin, but he have to fight Lubin, you know, as his mandatory. He fights Lubin again, Arislandi Lara, Hurd, and J-Rock Williams. There's nothing for him to do at 54. Nothing. He goes up to 60, becomes a world champion after becoming undisputed at junior middleweight. See, the junior middleweight division and who Jermell Charlo is competing against is much tougher competition. And this is no slight to Terence Crawford. 3-division world champion, undisputed at junior welterweight. and currently the WBO welterweight world champion. But the competition that Jermell Charlo is going through, opposed to the competition that Terence Crawford went through, it's not a comparison. So Jermell Charlo has supplanted himself and passed Terence Crawford on the pound-for-pound list. I think that the pound-for-pound list after November 21st is going to look like this. It's going to be Errol the True Spence Jr., unified world champion. And then at number 2, it's going to be Jermell Charlo, who's unified, and I hope that he's pushing for that Patrick Teixeira fight to become undisputed. Please push for the Patrick Teixeira fight for undisputed and petition the WBC. If the WBC, now we're going to use this franchise to our advantage. Now let's use the franchise to our advantage. If the WBC, and hey, listen, I'm not trying to slight Erickson Lubin, but if the WBC doesn't want to conform and give you the opportunity to have a fight, interim fight or a voluntary where it would be for undisputed against Patrick Teixeira, tell them to franchise you. Because according to the franchise rules, right, you can still be undisputed if you franchise. That's what they're doing with Teofimo Lopez, Vasyl Lomachenko, aren't they? So you can still be undisputed if you fight Patrick Teixeira, right? So make it work in our favor now. And see, they're going to have to conform to your demands because there's no reason for them not to. Why would you elevate Canelo Alvarez? Why would you ever elevate Vasyl Lomachenko and not elevate Jermell Charlo? There's no reason for you not to elevate Jermell Charlo. Because he has won the WBC title twice now. And never gave that sanctioned body a black eye outside the ring. He's won it twice. So if anybody deserved to be franchised, it's Jermell Charlo. Vasyl Lomachenko fought for a vacant WBC title and never defended it. Jermell Charlo has picked that belt up twice and defended it multiple times. Unification bouts. So he deserves it. Anybody else deserves. If nobody, he deserves it. So if they don't want to give you a voluntary so you can fight Patrick Teixeira for undisputed, tell them, listen, franchise me. Because you're still fighting for undisputed according to their rule book. According to their rule book, you're still fighting for undisputed. So make it work for you. But like I said, I still think Errol Spence would be the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. But Jermell Charlo is making a strong case for himself. And once again, kudos and give the roses to Derrick James for having these 2 unified world champions in his stable. Great job. And congratulations to Jermell Charlo and Jermell Charlo. Can't wait to see what's coming. We got some more boxing October 24th, October 17th. Boxing is back. But that's all I got for y'all, man. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blueblood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed? Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blueblood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shouts out to the entire LDBC. Shouts out to New Media. Shouts out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.